listening to the 14th Source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bring you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses in the episode for Friday, May 13th, 2022.
Ooh,
Friday the 13th.
Oh, no.
It's actually very appropriate because all my students have stuff, their final projects are due today. So, so appropriate. I get to levy that against them.
Well, I hear that you're a real hack and slasher.
That's what they say. I'm really up at everywhere.
Yeah.
They say that you're a real dream hunter.
No.
I know that's Freddy,
Yeah,
but
it's just let's
speaking of horror movies, neither of us have seen it, but man, apparently Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is doing very well and is surprising a lot of people. And surprising in that it's not surprising if you realize who is directing it, because apparently that movie gets kind of gross. But I'm like,
is it a Sam Raimi movie?
Right. So that's made it more enticing. I've just been so busy with school and I haven't been able to see it. Plus, it's kind of an ongoing rule at this show. We don't watch stuff or read stuff or play stuff the day or weekend it comes out. We like to be fashionably too late to get to those things, but we'll get to it for sure. But if you've seen it, dear listeners, let us know what you think. Don't spoil it, I guess. I mean, I don't really care, but be nice to those around you. Have you heard anything? Do you know any people that have seen Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness?
I know our friend of the show, Taylor, has.
And friend of the show, Kyron Silva.
Yeah, so maybe they could just do their own show about how much they liked it or didn't like it.
There we go.
Finally, we score that week off we've always wanted.
Right? We just back away slowly. But we are here, actually, to talk about something new, because there are few franchises out there that we do, in some way or another, whether it's both of us or one of us at a time, that we do stay on top of.
And so obviously this week we're going to talk about the newest season of Netflix's The Circle.
Yes. At the heart of which is you said it in the text. I was trying to remember.
So this is not a big spoiler because it's in the first episode. Two of the Spice Girls are actually in.
That's right.
And it's only, I think at this point, it's only 4 episodes into the season. It's one of these things where for a dumb reality show, it's like, wow, for a dumb reality show about people in locked apartments where they don't interact with each other except via text, the idea that this season they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to introduce the Spice Girls.
Which Spice Girls? And you can just use their nicknames if you'd like.
Scary and Baby. Mel B and
Gotcha.
Baby. So it's
not the other Mel, is it?
No,
that's Sporty.
So either way, it's just I don't, it's one of the few shows on Netflix apparently I still watch. So
surprisingly, I was not talking about that show. I know now that's all our listeners want to hear about, I'm sure, because they're all
the Spice
hot fans for the Spicy Circle.
I think that's a different thing. See your doctor. But no, we are here to talk about a new show that started last week. So Indeed. At the time of you listening to this, 2 episodes of this new show have already come out. So we're actually talking about something new in cutting edge #new. And that is Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
Disclaimer, as of this recording, we have not watched the second episode yet. Just of this release.
Episode. Not the pilot. The pilot came out in 1966.
Indeed.
And actually, I want to say, for those that don't know, this Strange New Worlds is it's a new Star Trek series about the USS Enterprise under the command of Captain Christopher Pike, who was featured in Star Trek Discovery Season 2, but more importantly, was the original captain of the show in the original pilot that was filmed in 1966 or so, 67, but then never aired until in its own until the late 80s, I believe. Is ends up the pilot. Some of the footage was used in an original series episode, The Menagerie, because it's a clip show for a show you never saw, right?
Right.
But basically, even the on an interview on the Will Wheaton show, executive producer Akiva Goldsman.
Will Wheaton does an after show for all this.
Yeah, it's called the Ready Room. Right? It's not actually called the Will Wheaton show, but he was interviewing Anson Mount and Akiva Goldsman. But the idea that they call it's the 55-year pickup. Right, this pilot was made 55 years ago, and it finally got picked up for a series. So that's kind of where to start with the context of what is this
another
show.
Star Trek okay, I guess I'll just sit this one out. Oh wait, I don't have to.
You don't have to, because you also watched the TV.
I watched it before you. I win the Star Trek.
You win the Star Trek. So, and I think what to get started, it's this new show that's. It is it's a show that's based on an old pilot, and it's also loosely, there was some a little bit of context in Star Trek Discovery Season 2, but for all intents and purposes, it's a new show with no real baggage, right?
Right. That's the thing that kind of made me, because we have the Paramount Plus now, because we couldn't live without The Next Generation in this household, and you told me about Strange New Worlds, and I've seen advertisements for it. And everything you were telling me, it seemed like actually a pretty good new Star Trek to jump onto without having to do a bunch of rewatching or catch up. It's the original crew of the Enterprise. It is an episodic show, ostensibly, that is literally about this team just kind of, effing off on its own,
going to Strange New Worlds,
so to speak. Yes, literally. They should put that in the title. And so I'm like, I risked it, knowing that there was a little bit of history from Discovery. But honestly, as a person that has no context for that, aside from Andrew talking at me about Discovery, I feel like if you're worried about that, dear listeners, they cover what seems to me the basic necessities of that pre-story pretty thoroughly. And they give you enough information to watch this first episode without any hindrance and with full enjoyment.
So here we are we have USS Enterprise, Captain Christopher Pike, who played by Anson Mount, who was an actor that's been in things.
Wasn't he in the Inhumans?
I think that might be right.
Let me look this up real quick. This is important.
Way to drag in an unfortunate detail.
Inhumans TV series. Anson Mount plays Black Bolt. Okay. All right.
So he was the leader of the Inhumans.
He finally gets some lines.
So, he plays Captain Pike, who is this character who's he's the Starfleet captain. Who's the big thing is the show opens with a little bit of emotional baggage. We know that this captain has some stuff he's dealing with, some emotional things.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah,
let's just spoil it.
Which is not spoil it, because it's he knows in the future he's going to suffer a terrible accident and be reduced to what we like to fondly refer to as the beep beep chair.
Right. He saw his own death, technically.
Which is a character that's so iconic that it's in fact appeared in Futurama and other parodies of this, because it was the idea that he's so disfigured, he's in a chair that the only thing he can do to communicate is go beep or beep beep, right? So he knows that that's going to happen in the future, and he kind of knows when it's going to happen, and so he's dealing with that. And then, but we have the ship with it's a crew of people. Some of the new characters, some are returning characters that were in Discovery. Mostly it's Captain Pike, his first officer, number 1, and their science officer, Lieutenant Spock. And there's some new characters. There's also some characters that are from the original series, but this is basically them earlier in their life.
Recast, yeah.
Right. So we have their nurse, Christine Chappell. There's a new cadet on board. Her name is Nyota Uhura.
Oh, nice.
And the doctor, whose name is I'm blanking on it. He's actually was a character from the original series as well.
Oh, really?
But only it was 2 episodes where DeForest Kelly couldn't be there. So get this other guy to be a doctor. All right.
That's pretty great. I'm not gonna lie, I got a little confused because we've all. This is me just inserting this. We've been watching slowly Lower Decks as well. I'm like, oh yeah, the Doctor's a cat, right? And I'm like, no, shit, that's an animated show.
Yeah. So it's Strange New Worlds, and it really is that they set out in space to. In this case, they have this ship that's gone missing that was basically doing a first contact mission, or at least an investigation. First contact being, hey, this planet is showing signs of having warp travel, faster than light travel. That's when we, kind of crack open the seal and go visit and say, hello there from the galaxy. Because at that point, you've kind of joined spacefaring civilizations. So the crew of the ship disappears. And of course, the whole point is that in command of this ship is our own number one, is played by Rebecca Romijn. And so they have to go find out what happened and potentially rescue this other crew.
Right. At the start of the show, Christopher Pike is in convalescence. It was not in convalescence, but he's definitely sort of
hiding out, in
chilling
Montana.
out. Yeah. And because of the trauma he experienced when he saw his own death. But yeah, it's a kind of, I don't want to say it's a grounded show, but it's like, I like the kind of ragtag nature of this crew, and I feel like the pilot does a pretty good job of sort of introducing the characters and setting up the premise of the show. Coming off of Discovery, how different does it feel? Because obviously I'm sure a lot of the people involved with Discovery are involved with making this show, and obviously these characters are introduced in Discovery. With regard to the overall sort of the timbre of Discovery, or the approach to it, how does this feel different to you? And what do you like or maybe dislike about the differing tones or approaches?
Oh, so this show is it's very different than Discovery or Picard, because it very much is, if anything, the show that it might be most comparable to in the present is Lower Decks, where it's like every episode is kind of its own thing, but we have some character continuity. That's actually, again, going back to this interview with Will Wheaton, Akiva Goldsman says, what they wanted was the original series, but with some emotional continuity. For example, if you've seen the original series, you see City on the Edge of Forever, James Kirk watches social worker Edith Keeler have to get hit by a car. He's sad. He's so upset that when he says, let's get the hell out of here. And the next episode, he's fine.
Right.
So what they're trying to say is, hey, let's not do that. Let's have a little bit of continuity with these characters, but no big story. There's no, meta plot or anything. It really is just every episode a new adventure of exploring the galaxy, seeing kind of what this federation of planets is doing, and the great things that they can do. I actually, for me, Picard just finished season 2. Discovery had finished season 4 a little bit earlier, with really big, story, serialized narratives. I actually got to say, this is it. I realize Lower Decks is the same way, where it's like it's nothing super important. It's just but it's still fun. Like, it captures what I like about this, about the genre. And without, having to worry about what's going to happen, or they're going to save, Spock's cat or whatever. Like, no, it doesn't matter. It's
Data's cat.
This is Strange New Worlds. Maybe Spock can have a cat too.
Maybe.
It's a truly strange new world where Spock has a cat. So yeah, and I think in the first episode they really captured the kind of, here's a new planet with a new crisis or a new challenge we have to face. They did the things that is Star Trek. They exhibited Star Trek-y values.
Yeah. And there's still punching, though. There's plenty of punching.
Yeah, and there's some fisticuffs. So I honestly, like, it does kind of give me this, like, if you made something like the original series nowadays, but didn't, like, you were able to fast forward the look, the feel. Although the look still looks like, I'd say more so than like the J.J. Abrams movie, this looks a lot more like what if you built that 1967 set, but with a little bit different, like a more modern aesthetic, as opposed to, I always joke that J.J. Abrams, his set looked like Apple designed it, right?
Well, I mean, the bridge to this Enterprise is pretty shiny.
Oh, of course.
It looks like a movie theater lobby.
But
lots of neon and reflective surfaces.
But it does look to me similar to kind of the same feel. So I really
sure.
I think I'm so excited. It's a lot of fun.
And we get to share this together. It's very exciting. One of the things I was really impressed with was especially how the show opened. Because, yeah, it's a new show, and they need to introduce you to the characters. And yes, it's technically, you know, a spin-off of Discovery. But I think you're really right. They really embedded sort of the ethos of the original series into the show. Like, the opening scene especially does a really good job of basically introducing you to the premise of what Star Trek is all about, which is you're basically at this, you know, this space center where people are... There's just like alarms and shit going off where we're seeing the backs of heads of people looking up at a giant screen, and an unidentified object has appeared, you know, in low orbit. And they're like, what's going on? And as the image comes into focus, you realize it's not the Enterprise, but it's something, you know, it's obviously a Federation ship. Mm-hmm. And you realize that we're not looking at humans on Earth. We're looking at people on their own planet. And, it was just really cool. You're like, oh, that was clever. That was nice. We're the aliens here. This is clever. And it was, it really kind of, like I said, crystallized, especially the missions of in the case of the show's history, like early Star Trek, of like, we're just kind of going out there and putting feelers out and engaging to the, you know, engaging to the best of their abilities with the tools they have available to them. It's not like, oh, we're doing big peace missions to, you know, kingdoms and stuff like that. It's very small. It feels very small. It feels very earnest, and it feels very a show about a burgeoning exploration society. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but it's just it was cool to see them really pull back on their we do science fiction. Well, you know, pulling back on the lore, basically, this huge years-long, decades-long collection of interactions and relationships and rivalries, and just going like, what if one group of people met another group of people for the first time, and we have to deal with that problem, you know?
Right.
Something they deal with in Next Generation as well, and I'm sure every Star Trek.
Yeah.
But they just framed that whole thing perfectly in the first 10 minutes. It was beautiful.
No, and I think it does kind of do that. It's new, it's its own thing, while also connecting itself to, you know, this giant, decades-long world, for lack of a better phrase. You know, like, some of it's just little stuff. They don't have to work hard. You know, like to me, it's like when they say, oh, the ship that goes missing, the USS Archer, and of course, as a Star Trek person, like, oh, that's named after Jonathan Archer, as played by Scott Bakula. You know,
oh, right.
Or just these kind of little things where they reference stuff where, like, it doesn't matter. It's just fun. I mean, I find it interesting. They have a whole scene where Spock is talking to his betrothed to Pring, and you know, and it's the joke is, if you know where this goes, you're like, oof, this is going to end badly. But right now, it seems really like, oh yeah, look.
Where does it go?
That's original series, season 2, Amok Time. You could watch and find out. Where in fact T'Pring shows back up, looking a bit younger, older, because you know, different actor. No, but the idea that there is this, you know, you would have these like these characters just having their experiences, and we're seeing that, and there's story there, and again, they're what the story they had of this world that basically was a world in conflict, a world in civil war that the Federation basically kind of stumbles into the middle of for the wrong reason, and then discovers, oh, but actually we're part of this. You know, how do we deal with that?
I really thought it was cute. They're sort of dodge and dance around, bringing a Kirk on. Kirk on.
Yeah,
board.
It's a Kirk. Yeah, Samuel Kirk.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. So that's another joke, is that they say throughout the episode, well, some of our crew aren't here yet, including that Lieutenant Kirk you asked for. And the reason why that's funny is, of course, they announced like a month or two ago that they'd cast an actor to play James T. Kirk. And so you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty fast to bring him in the first episode. Also, kind of weird, because I thought they'd already said that. I thought there's a scene where Kirk says he hadn't met Pike until he took command of the Enterprise. But then you find out, no, it's in fact Samuel Kirk.
Right. the Kirk shows up on board, and it's this dude with a mustache. You're like, all right.
Which is for those that have watched the original series, that's a character that is mentioned in the original series, and unfortunately, we know how he dies. But again,
does he get his own beep machine?
No, he doesn't. But he does have a mustache upon death. So like he kept it going,
Good man.
But so there's that kind of thing where like these are just what they've said is just going to be a bunch of isolated stories about this place, but with the continuity of the characters as we see them kind of grow and develop. And I gotta say right now, I'm all these characters they have, I'm excited for.
Yeah, it's a good first episode. Last thing I'll say, I just keep remembering things as we talk. I like their subtle remix of the original series theme music in their theme. Mm-hmm. Very cool. Yeah, very cool. We're stuck, but my household is very excited about this. Nicole fell absolutely in love with this show by the end. By the beginning, by the opening scene, but definitely by the end. So we're now watching two Star Trek shows. I hope you're proud of me.
Well, didn't you just say you're also watching Lower Decks?
Oh shit, 3.
That's 3. Like you're watching.
Oh man.
But so I think it is. I think what's remarkable to me is, yes, some people don't like some Star Treks. There's a lot of people that don't like Discovery. There's some people that don't like Picard. There's some people that don't like Prodigy or Lower Decks.
Some people don't like the J.J. Abrams movie series.
Yeah. You mean the J.J. Abrams movie? There was only one, right?
Yep. Yes, there was.
So there are a lot of what I think is I kind of like is this idea that there's kind of like a Star Trek for different people.
Right. Right.
Some people want this classic thing. They want whatever. They want Picard. They want this. So it's an interesting time because I contrast it with the way people talk about, for example, either like the Marvel the MCU, or how they talked about the DCCW when it was more than just one show. That like, oh, they're all kind of samey. Every MCU movie's the same. And of course, we argue that they differentiate a little bit, but like
sure.
But this is, I think, definitely there's a distinct difference in tone and feel from something like Strange New Worlds and Picard and Discovery, and I like that. I like
what's that other animated show they have?
Prodigy. Yeah,
right.
Which that's a very kid-centric show, although not for everyone, but again, different audiences, and I can imagine being someone that watches one of them and being like, yeah, that was pretty cool. Oh, I'll try the other one out.
Right. I would say not that comparing them is fair or warranted, but I think Star Trek, based on what you've told me and what I'm seeing, kind of what they're doing at their new home on Discovery, Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus.
Yeah. The diversity, and like you said, there's kind of a home for every Star Trek fan. They're doing that diversification a bit better than even Star Wars is doing, where they have successful shows, loved shows, but right now on Disney Plus, like it's all kind of much more sort of I don't want to say incestuous, but like the shows they've been dropping have been very interconnected, and the trailers we're seeing for upcoming shows, as good as they might be, kind of all have a similar kind of tone and vibe to them. So.
Well, and I think the big thing I will say, and maybe I'm wrong here, Alex Kurtzman is I think he's basically the Kevin Feige of Star Trek right now, but he is not. I don't think he's writing these shows, right? I don't think he's that involved, other than they
he is Kevin Feige.
I guess he's like Kevin Feige. So whereas like with Star Wars, right, they definitely have Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are pretty involved with a lot of, especially Dave Filoni, right? And so I think it does feel like these shows, they have their own showrunners, and even different showrunners from year to year. And they do. It sounds like they do interact with each other. They do. I can imagine like the writers' rooms or whatever, the showrunners talk to each other. Like, hey, what are you doing? Because we've already seen instances where one show will do a thing, and then the other show will bring a thing like. So the best example I always say is that Picard introduces the Kawat Malat, an order of Romulan warrior nuns, and. Not 6 months to 12 months later, or a year later, Star Trek Discovery has a Kawat Malat show up, and you're like, oh, okay, like you're building worlds together, but you're also telling your own story. So if I don't watch Discovery, it doesn't matter Picard is not enjoyed less,
Right.
So I think there's something about it that feels, and it doesn't do the heavy-handed Marvel thing, which is. Here's a thing that makes you that suggests to you that you have to go watch the other show now, right?
I'd like to hear like how necessary is it to watch WandaVision, for example, to watch before watching Doctor Strange. We have people that will definitely tell us upon hearing.
And that's why I was a little worried with Strange New Worlds, because it is such a sequel to Discovery Season 2. But you know what? The only thing that mattered, they told you in the first episode, basically.
Yeah.
And of course they'll continue to reference things, but I don't think there's going to be anything heavy-handed like, oh, you're not going to get this if you haven't seen TNG,
Right.
Or you're not going to get this if you haven't seen the original series. I think it's more of fun things that if you have seen them, you get what's going on, but if you haven't, then it doesn't take away from the narrative.
Now that I've gone down the Star Trek hole, I wonder how much I'm going to enjoy the returning, and I believe final, perhaps, season of the Orville. Because that had become a Star Trek show.
Right.
And that comes back in June.
And it's, I imagine, like, now it'll feel kind of
redundant.
Like, well,
honestly.
And I think, it's like we talked about this with Orville, is that at the time it felt like it wanted to, especially after the first half of the first season, it was trying to do what like this TNG like show, this Star Trek like show. And now it's like, oh, Star Trek caught up,
Yeah, right.
They figured their flavor out. Now, like, Orville is going to feel like, oh, it's that Seth MacFarlane show.
Yeah.
We'll see, though,
They should just absorb it, like buy it from Fox, and just like, okay, now that's another show that's another Star Trek show on Paramount Plus. Why not? That's what he wants in the first place.
Oh, of course. I mean, Seth MacFarlane would do. I mean, he was in Star Trek. He was literally in Star Trek. He would love to be in Star Trek again.
Yeah.
So I gotta say, and for those who don't know, the plan that they'd said, I don't know how long it's going to hold out, was that there'd be a new Star Trek every week. And they've been doing that since, I think,
like a new episode, not like a new series
a new episode
every week
of a show. And I think they've got 9 more weeks of Strange New Worlds, and I believe then at some point Lower Deck season 3, and then Prodigy returns for the back half of season 1. I'm not sure, there may be some gaps though, right? But it is this kind of thing where it's like when Disney started playing the MCU shows. It really was like every week was a new episode of a show. It was like, oh, cool, you can just tune in the same day and get a new show. We'll see how it holds out.
But speaking of good changes, all things must change, and things continue to change, especially for Doctor Who.
Oh, do you mean the announcement that they've announced the 14th physician of Physician Who?
Yeah. You should explain that. There's a tweet I sent Andrew where, like, apparently this guy posted a screenshot of a website that just consciously plagiarizes existing news stories but just changes keywords in them. So instead of saying the 14th Doctor has been announced for Doctor Who, it just the 14th physician has been announced or something like that.
Yeah. For Physician Who.
Physician.
So yeah, so this weekend they announced the new actor who will be portraying the titular role of the Doctor
at the BAFTAs, or it was at some event. I don't remember what it was specifically, but because it happened early in the morning, because it was England and we're in the States.
So they announced an actor, Ncuti Gatwa, who I guess you're more familiar with because your house is watching, what is it, Sex Education?
Sex Education, yeah, it's on Netflix. Yeah. A 29-year-old Rwandan Scotsman who's taking over the TARDIS.
Who's taking over as the Doctor. And this is for the 60th anniversary year, which is, 2023? So...
with Russell T. Davis at the helm again?
Yeah.
As showrunner, I guess.
As the showrunner, yeah. So, he's... It's funny because I know a lot of people, apparently anyone that's seen Sex Education is like really, really excited for this. So that leads me to believe that that's because he's really good.
Right.
And, and it's that kind of thing where he's definitely very young, but it's not...
But not the youngest.
Not the youngest. And honestly, like, this is the third time they've had a late 20-something.
Right.
So...
Peter Davison, Matt Smith, and
so it's kind of exciting to have a, and I feel better. Like, I don't want to suggest that, like, oh, Jodie Whittaker was bad, blah, but we already knew she was leaving, right? Like,
right.
So just to see, okay, they've got their person and they're moving forward with making this show. Which is good, because I know at one point, like, I think RTD had done an interview where he said, oh, they wanted to go big and, like, make this like the MCU and have all this Doctor Who stuff, and a big actor, and I think he said Hugh Grant. He did. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, let's not do that.
Well, that's the thing that came out. Like, apparently he admitted that he engaged in a major and deliberate disinformation campaign just to throw people off. I'm like, that's RTD is loving being back in this position.
Well, because he's always loved this kind of shit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, the gamesmanship of making a show, less making the show, more talking about making the show. Not that he doesn't make a good show. I mean, he's fine, but he definitely liked that publicity of, like, let me say things about. I mean, right? We talk about in the first 4 years when Billy Piper left, and how he basically says, look, you're going to come back at the end. In a couple of years, but I need you to talk about it like you're done with this show. And she's like, yes, I will. And they did. Right?
Right. I mean, yeah, that kind of thread has always been in his shows. Bad Wolf being a big, the first major one, which he just ended up naming his production company after, Bad Wolf Productions. I'm like, okay, this is his jam. This kind of engagement with the public and keeping them guessing.
Which is, it's interesting, because I was thinking it's similar to J.J. Abrams, who really loves... Whoa. Because he does, right? Like, he goes on shows and has clues about stuff and loves to... I mean, I was rewatching Fringe recently. I wasn't, my partner was, but in like, how much of that shit, like the little little goodies, and in fact, to the point where if you go look up, what is it, The Observers from Fringe, there's stuff about them showing up at non-Fringe related things, like, so like, that's what I'm saying. It's that same kind of thing. Like, I could see RTD, like, having, weird Doctor Who shit at some other event that he was, like, or in another, just so he could say, like, ooh, what's going on?
Coincidentally, Fringe also an Orci Kurtzman joint. Sorry. Yeah. Before they broke up and Kurtzman started atoning for his sins by saving Star Trek.
Let's dance around that.
He kind of atoned for his sins for Transformers by making probably the best modern Transformers TV show with Transformers Prime. So you know what? You're okay in my book. But we're not talking about Star Trek. We're talking about Ncuti Gatwa here, who seems adorable. I will admit, my wife has been a huge fan of Sex Education. The show starring, oh goodness gracious, Asa Butterfield and Gillian Anderson. Basically, it's a show about an awkward teenage boy whose mother is a successful sex therapist and has just kind of absorbed the ability to talk to people and have people, help people talk about sex just through osmosis. And what he basically does, with the help of a peer at his high school, ostensibly, the British high school, they set up basically a black market sex therapy service where they just kind of help horny teenagers get through their relationship problems. And Ncuti Gatwa plays the main character's best friend, and he's amazing. Like, we went back and started from the beginning, and I was specifically putting on the critical lens here. I'm like, do I see the Doctor in this kid? Even though he's playing a teenager in modern Britain, but there's a manic chaos, a delightful chaos to him. That there's some scenes that I'm like, this is going to be perfect. And especially with RTD at the helm, who knows, who loves the show, who defined the show. Let's be honest, in the modern era, I think it's going to be a good fit. I think it's going to be a good. It's going to be a good fit, and more importantly, it's going to be a good fit. But yeah, it's momentous in a lot of ways. It's momentous in the fact that it's a new Doctor. It's the first person of color we've had playing the lead role, and
not okay. Is as the lead role, not the first person to play the character. Yeah.
No, of course not. Yeah, no, I wouldn't make that mistake. No, of course, we still have the fugitive Doctor, and hopefully, RTD plays with that character some more. That'd be great. And of course, another Scott. That's great.
Right. So it's funny because I was, I think when they announced it, I was like, oh, I wonder if he's gonna what Scottish accent he's going to have, if any, right. Because there's this funny thing, right? There's four Scottish actors who've played the Doctor.
Right. McCoy.
McCoy, Tenet, Capaldi, and now Gatwa. And so, of course, with Tenet being notorious for the one who does not express his Scottish accent.
The one who does not Scott?
So, of course, although I think Ncuti, from what I understand, he's got a Scottish with a dash of Rwandan.
Right. From what I understand, he moved to Scotland, I think when he was like 2 years old. Fleeing, his parents fled the
genocide.
Not to bring it down. Right?
Right. But that's why, like, he's it's mostly Scottish. But of course, if you live with your parents, you probably talk
community
a little bit
and stuff like that. Yeah.
We'll
I'm excited, and I wasn't even thinking about the new Doctor at this point because we still have one more Jodie Whittaker special to go. Yeah, just kind of pushed it on my mind, like, we'll get new Doctor Who eventually, right? But it came out at the right time with in a great way, and I will say I also liked how humble and sort of muted, in a sense, the interviews with RTD and Gatwa were. But like, yeah, this is the new Doctor, but we're gonna shut the fuck up because Whittaker still has stuff to do, and we'll talk to you when we're ready to do our business. And I'm like, that's awesome. I can't wait to see what happens there.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's a lot of exciting new stuff.
So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media as well, such as Twitter, where you can find us at respective handles. You can find Andrew tweeting about tabletop role-playing games at Profound Dark, and you can find me at dbethel. You can also find us on Instagram. You can find Andrew at Profound Brick and me and my work at dbethel Comics.
Well, you're on our website at forallintents.net. You can also take a look at our YouTube page, or you may be listening to the show on YouTube, as we now feature our episodes there, which you can listen to. And if you do, you should like and subscribe, as the kids on YouTube say.
Indeed. Ring that bell or something. I'm not sure. We use two tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusae, the other is called District 4. They're both written and performed by Kevin McLeod, the Clan McLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music at his website at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution License.
If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to leave a review, whether a text review and or using the proprietary metric will help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. Andrew.
What?
One, did you know there's a video game... There's a World Video Game Hall of Fame.
There is. It makes sense.
And you just got that link I probably sent you. And they just announced this year's editions. The one that stands out to me is, let's just read through them here. The Legend of Zelda, The Ocarina of Time, Ms. Pac-Man, Sid Meier's Civilization, Dance Dance Revolution. I know some of those games you have particular history with.
I'm not very good at Miss Pac-Man.
But your Dance Dance Revolution skills are epic. I've seen the photos.
They're not. They're pretty terrible. But
when you put on your Navy outfit, you go nuts. It's actually funny. I was looking up Miss Pac-Man because I didn't know the story of that game, and I'm like, that's weird. But like, this is something we should do after the show, but like, have you looked up the story of Ms. Pac-Man? It's bizarre.
It's featured in one of these video game documentaries I saw.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
because it's not a Namco joint. And so, like, I wonder if they're just stirring up old shit by adding this to the Video Game Hall of Fame, if Namco even cares. There's a Polygon link here discussing the Video Game Hall of Fame and the new editions, and they have a huge list of all the games that are in there. Andrew, without necessarily consulting the list, actually, no, let me tell you the best game. This is probably number one, Andrew. Microsoft Solitaire.
All right, wrap it up.
So until you play a video game by yourself, dear listeners, I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast. I was reading about Asa Butterfield, and apparently, according to his Wikipedia, he was signed by Team Liquid.
Liquid.
Because apparently he's actually a very good Smash Brothers player.
Is he really?
So it says he's been involved in competitive Nintendo gaming. He was at the Nintendo World Championships in 2017.
These kids.
And apparently in 2020 he was signed by Team Liquid, which is a pretty notorious esports group. So it's just like, when he's not acting, he's like, I gotta go crush some Smash Brothers.
Yeah, who's your main?
Will you give me free puntos or something? Yeah.
That's how they're written on my syllabus too. We got this class is out of 1,000 puntos. Puntos Incorporated. You're listening to the 14th source for all SNW. It doesn't abbreviate well, that show.
Well, the one that technically abbreviated the worst, though, right?
Voyager.
Discovery.
Disc.
STD.